What happens when you purify your body, your mind, your spirit? Something miraculous. The body begins to heal itself. Welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast, where each week we explore new ways to heal your body from the root, igniting your inner healer. You are a medicine. And now, here's your host, Robin Stebbins.
Hello and welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast. It's me, your host, Robin Stebbins, and today I'm here with Martin Thies, who is a spiritual teacher. He focuses on the art of shamanic journeys and the application of the medicine wheel, which I really am interested in. He takes a holistic approach to finding well-being, balance, peace in his inner life, and his coaching practice is called Light Trails Company, and its mission is to assist others on their journey from suffering to joy. We all need that. Martin is in the process of building a decentralized network. Ooh, we got to talk more about that too. Of nonprofit organizations that aim at building low entrance barrier refuges for people to find healing and regeneration all around the world. So needed right now, Martin. All of this healing is so needed for our planet right now and the people in him inhabiting it. So I always like to just say, hey, introduce yourself now. We know your bio.
Yeah.
Who are you, Martin? What do you stand for?
I would say probably everything is already said in that bio in terms of what I stand for. I stand for regeneration of the planet, for helping people to find back to themselves and to reconnect pretty much through nature, with nature, to their spirituality as a means of, I don't know, having a more fulfilled human experience, and so I think there's many pathways to that. But for me, the spiritual path, especially the shamanic journeys, have been what has helped me the most. And so I've found at some point that it is really needed, as you said, to provide access to that. And so, just this maybe this place between for-profit and non-profit is a really interesting one, where it is about creating benefits for others, but also finding ways how we can support ourselves and how we can live in this world while still being of service to others. So that is really a very interesting place for me to be in. And other than that, from what you just said, I'm a musician. I love to make music. I love to create music festivals and all these things. So love sauna. It's like the contemporary sweat lodge for me, where I go and where I find my regeneration, healing. Those are the things that I really love to do.
Sauna. That's when you said that, it reminds me I need to get into the sauna. I've got a knee injury I'm nursing, and thinking about all the different healing modalities I talk so much about, but that's what I'm going to start doing again, because that, I think, is so important, to get the sun, to get fresh, pure water inside your body, on your body, and to sweat out the toxins. We're infiltrated with toxins these days. So, well, thank you for that introduction. I'm excited to talk to you. There's about 50,000 things so far I think we could easily talk about. One, I just want to touch on before we get into the shamanic journeys, and that is just decentralization and nonprofit, for-profit. I've done a lot of thought about it. I know Rudolf Steiner says, never work for money. And I think I've tried to see panning out to see what's happening on this planet. And what I've seen is that we have sold our souls for money, and not even a lot of money, like $1. We sell our soul by saying, I'm going to go do this job that I do not enjoy because I've got to pay the bills. And year after year after year doing that is dimming your light. It is releasing that energy. But then the question is, what do we do? Gift-based economies and that kind of transaction. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ringing Cedars book and Anastasia.
No.
Talks about how societies are forming on this Ringing Cedars philosophy. And it's every person and family gets 2.5 acres that they plant in a certain way that regenerates itself. You don't need any fertilizers, any pesticides. You can grow pretty much whatever you want with this setup, but it's self-sustaining, and then you can just trade with all the other 2.2 acre, I think it's a hectare, properties or plots. And there's lots of communities forming. The books originated in Russia, so there's a lot of communities that have already formed and have been going for decades in Russia. But I just thought I'd mention that because I think we get so, focused on let's heal the bodies, but we are nature. We're not part of nature. We're not harmonizing with nature. We are nature, just in a different form. We're structured water in a different form. So in that, we can't get just Robin healthy and not have Martin healthy, or have the rest of the culture very sick. It's like having an organism. You can't fix the spleen and have the liver completely degraded.
Yeah.
So in that, we have to have not just our internal biome healing, emotional, spiritual, but the external world that we live in as well.
Absolutely.
So thank you for allowing me to make that point.
Yeah.
I really want to talk to you about your experience with shamanic journeys and how you started that and what even got you interested in it in the first place.
So what the easiest thing to tell is what got me interested is probably this grace, right? So when my friend did a shamanic journey seminar and he talked to me about it, that inner attraction towards that, because I had no connection to spirituality at the time. I was miserable, but I could have just said, well, that's interesting, and not have pursued it, right? So that element of grace where we stumble into situations that are beneficial, but we have no clue about it. And so that is what got me there. Most of all, the totem animal journey that he explained that he had done during the workshop. So I was really curious about what is my totem animal, and the idea of this animal that shows up and that mirrors us, our potential, and our kind of like a astrology chart or something where we can learn more about ourselves. That was really what interested me in the first place. And so I just went to this workshop and never left. Basically, I'm still with my mentor, the one that did that workshop over 10 years ago.
And so everyone has a very different definition of a shamanic journey. And I think people that are listening are probably building up a different idea in their mind. What is a journey to start with? And then what is a shaman?
So the shamanic journey, from my perspective, would be a part of us. An astral part of us is traveling to a different kind of reality that we are surrounded by, that we have oftentimes forgotten how to connect with. People who are actively dreaming are most comfortable with that kind of reality because they know that it is very helpful, and there's a lot of guidance, a lot of things that we learn in our dreams if we're open to work with that realm, right? So the shamanic journey is consciously, rather than in the sleep time, more often than not unconsciously being in that realm, in that reality, and finding guidance, support, healing, a lot of healing, because I often say that when we journey into non-ordinary reality, it's called in core shamanism, in that other kind of reality, we are getting closer to the source of the stream, and we can change the direction of the stream, or we can make certain adaptations, transformations that then affect us in this reality, our bodies. Everything is picking up that change that we're making in that non-ordinary reality. So it's kind of like changing the blueprint maybe, or something that is capable of really bringing in transformation and change and healing. And so that would be my definition, to consciously go to these places and to work with intentions that we have, whatever that intention may be.
So, and how does that look? Is that a group of people that get together, or do you do it one-on-one individually, or do you just go inward for yourself and do your own shamanic journey?
Everything you just said. So there are my mentor is mostly working in group settings. That is how I learned of it. So in a local circle, that is how I got introduced to that. And since I started my practice, I started with one-on-one coaching, where it's really about the person that is sitting in front of me, right? But then the important aspect of circle work that is also not to underestimate is that everybody brings their energy, everybody brings their intentions and their journeys, and we all learn from that, right? So the circle work or the group coaching, and that's not a coaching, it's a group experience, is also very important. But also I do that for myself and just by myself when I have some homework, or when I see there's an issue coming up and I seem not to be able to grasp it, or that it's continuously reappearing. There's certain dreams that I feel like they are telling me something. So I think I have to investigate this and see where is this coming from, right? So it's all of the things that you mentioned.
And so when you have one of these dreams, like this recurring dream, what's the process to then go in and start to untangle it and see, what is this a message from spirit, or is this a message from my soul? Is this a external message from 3D world? What's the process?
It probably depends on the dream. The dream that I just had in mind is a dream where I continuously, there's a bus or there is something that is ready for a group of people to leave. And I haven't packed my bags. Everything is scattered around. I haven't packed, and I'm in the rush because the bus is ready to leave. Everybody is kind of like already sitting in the bus or whatever. So that time pressure element of needing to really pack my stuff and get into the bus in order to be able to go. So there is this element where it's always, I can't find my things. I know they're somewhere, but so that is one dream that kept on reoccurring. So because of the nature of that, I asked myself, what is that dream showing me? And then I felt like this is something that is probably found in my roots and in my subconscious old experiences. And so it's an underworld journey. I would travel kind of like into the more denser past related realms and just look for guidance, and maybe meet my totem animal, ask that about that, or maybe meet some kind of spirit guide that I can ask. So it depends, but I was aware that it's something that needs to be released and to be healed, because it is an older pattern that just showed itself. And so I went into, as I mentioned, the underworld, and looked at that and saw, what can I do? What is there to learn? What is there to change?
And that's a great segue, because I'm interested in working with people that want to change their state. So either you're in a diseased or ill state, or your energy is low, or you're in a depressed state. And that usually you know, you encounter what you're talking about, dream interpretation, and seeing, you know, what traumas that you suffered that might be puppeting you today. But then also, I think where people get stuck and then they resist changing after that is where they showed up poorly, where their traumas were puppeting them in a way that created anger or poor parenting. Sometimes they sort of reinstall the trauma into this, you know, the future based on their past. And a lot of people, I think, don't want to go there because that's, I feel, where the real work begins. It's like, this is who I was, and so now I want to go past that. Is there a way in this space that you know, you can create a container or hold space for someone so that as they're going through this?
I think that is pretty much the only thing that I can do as a facilitator for that space, and whether the person is ready or not to confront these oftentimes painful past memories or whatever those experiences are, we usually have a pretty good understanding of what it is that we need to do or to stop doing, but we are hesitant because we're afraid of the unknown or of the pain that is awaiting us, right? So we choose oftentimes the known and the painful path because it gives us certainty and security in not having to be vulnerable and not knowing how if I'm no longer the way I was and have been to this point, then there's a big question mark that I can't answer. I can't look beyond the bend of this path or this trail, right? So it is scary, and I think that is the fear is probably what's keeping most people. And so I can only hold that space and be present, you know, and just give a room to venture into these places where all the people that work with me have these empowering experiences. And by creating a system or a program where it is a very round or really just like soft in the sense that it progresses continuously, and we're not starting with the hardest stuff. We're not starting with reintegrating trauma and bringing back soul parts. That is really something that needs to be just learned, you know, to step into these unknown places, and that is actually beneficial, and to be through that positive reaffirm or positive experience to be ready and say, well, this is really benefiting me so far, so I don't see a reason why this time it should be different. Maybe I'm able to open up to these dark spaces or to these suppressed emotions or whatever that is more slowly, and then I can let go of these things. So that's what I feel is what's keeping most people and what benefits them in the long run if they walk through that.
Have you seen personal examples of somebody that has been mired in trauma and progressed through these journeys and stepped out on the other side?
I would say probably myself, you know, just because I'm if I look at my journey, it's the one that I have been observing for the longest time. All the people who came into my work are relatively people I know for a year, you know, or maybe a little longer, except for friends that also are in this shamanic journey or on this shamanic journey path with me. But if I look at where I was when I started and where I'm at now, definitely it is an example of how this can change.
Okay, and pause there. I'm going to go get the bread out, and then I would I mean, if you're comfortable telling your story.
Yeah.
I would love to hear
Absolutely.
that. Okay.
That was quick.
Yeah, that's ovens right there. This is California. Everything's just like right small. Okay, so you would just finish saying, yeah, you were the example. So I'll just kind of go off that. Okay, so Martin, if you're comfortable, I would love to hear like your journey through this, because I think that would be inspiring to listeners, especially those, to differentiate. You're not using any substance, you're not using any plant medicines like ayahuasca or cannabis or mushrooms, correct?
Yeah.
So it's a different process to guide somebody through this journey. So yeah, I would be really honored if you'd share your story.
Absolutely. And I think it is what you just mentioned is so interesting because I was always afraid of these substances, right? Of especially of any psychotropic agents. And so that the reason for that was, and that is how the story begins, that I had so much suppressed. I had completely lost my connections to emotions. I didn't know how to feel. When I began working with my mentor, she literally needed to walk me to feeling something and explaining and asking questions. And so it was really almost like learning something that I wasn't able to do. And because of these suppressed emotions, mostly, I was really hesitant to use any kind of agent that would open Pandora's box in my understanding how I see it now. I didn't have a clear picture of it then. And so, as I mentioned, the emotional part was probably that was most difficult because there is emotional trauma and abuse in my past. So there's all these things that I wanted to just keep out. And depression is oftentimes, I don't know how many times you've spoken about this in your podcast, but just for the sake of really clarifying, depression is anger towards ourselves, right? So we get depressed when we have that anger, but we point it towards ourselves rather than to project it out to others. And so there was a lot of depressiveness in me, almost like chronic depression, coming, going, but always being somewhere either on the back burner or really, really intensive. And so it was, for the most part, I was asking myself, what am I doing here? I just feel miserable. And I remember that for maybe when I was 16, 17, 18, because we had a suicide in the family, that was how I got introduced to there's a solution actually for feeling like this. I could just commit suicide, right? Mm-hmm. And then I would be out of my misery. So that is a component that came in. And to just want to be sick and die, actually, right? Because I didn't have the courage to commit suicide, having experienced how devastating that was in our family and for everyone who experienced that. So I had to do, and I'm jumping a lot forward now, I had to do a lot of work and shamanic journeys in these spells that I had cast, wishing myself to be really sick and having a fatal disease to really undo that, because I was aware, oh my God, I've been creating this energy for such a long time. And if I'm not aware of that, and if I don't resolve that, it might come, because I've been really, really quite adamant about it, And so this was basically the beginning of the journey, feeling so miserable and depressed all the time that when I stumbled into the shamanic journey workshop, that I felt amazed that there's actually a way how to how to deal with this, you know, that there are tools, even just small journeys where we meet a tree of healing or something, that I really felt I don't have to be a victim to this depression the rest of my life. And I think the journey in itself with depression almost feels to me, I've never been an alcoholic, but it just feels like something that is probably always going, so far it has always been a part of me. Whenever my energy drops, whenever I feel low in my vibration, then that is the default into which I fall, and the patterns become shorter, not the patterns, but the time in which I am in this state, and the intensity is decreasing more and more, but it's still showing up every now and then. So I couldn't say I'm completely free of that. Maybe I am at some point, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and I think the depression, we tend to pathologize it, but I really, really appreciate what you said. You know, you had gotten into, you're casting spells on yourself. You know, and we first do it, it's really light, and it's up in that top of the cyclone where we can get out on our own. Like, oh, I'm being really negative, let me snap out of it. And then as we keep going down in that cyclone of depression, it gets so tight that you need actually a hand to help pull you out. And I think part of that power, you know, we have either a urge, a need to leave this dimension, or to stay here and deal with all of this mess, this trauma, this compounded ancestral trauma that keeps showing up and we keep repeating. So when somebody reaches out a hand, like you stumbled, you know, on the shamanic journey scene, it's almost like that's your soul reaching out saying, I want to be here.
Yeah.
And then somebody has the courage to say, hey, I want to see you. A lot of times in this country, we tend to, you know, put people like that in hospitals and lock them up or keep them separate. So a lot of people don't want to reach out and get help. It's stigmatized, and so people don't feel safe getting help.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of just speak to that a little bit more too. I know there's a lot of people here, especially in California and the United States, that are having a lot of issues with depression. So if you're listening right now, or if you're in that dark space, you know, what are some light-filled things that they could do to start just, you know, looking for that hand to reach them out of this cyclone of depression?
I think that's a really challenging question, because we are all so different. And if I can speak from my experience, especially when I'm in this really dark and heavy place, I don't want any help. I just want to be in. One part of me wants to be in this misery and actually enjoys that. It is hard to explain that in the right sense, because I am miserable, but there is this element of really drawing energy from this, imagining my funerals, and I don't know if you can relate to that, but
I
it's
can
like
relate to it. Yeah, I can relate to it, and have been in that dark space myself. I made a serious attempt at suicide when I was 16. I just didn't see a way out. I was in chronic pain. I had trauma. I had emotional trauma. I was an absolute mess. And this seemed, I mean, it was kind of what kept me going, was this, I would give myself, all right, 6 more months. If nothing changes in the 6 months, then I'm going to start planning. And what I believe it did now, I mean, I'm 54 and I've been on the light side. Not that I don't dip back in, like you said, it's always going to be part of me into that depression. But what I see now is that it kept me small. Like you're saying, like it was almost like you would say an alcoholic would get drunk. Then you're just dealing with being drunk. You're not dealing with your past and your trauma and your depression. when you're in that state of depression, it's almost like you're now tethered to the ground in this three-dimensional world, and it's small focused. You're in a very small little cave or box. And so then we're not having to look at our potential and walk down that road. I don't know if that resonates.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you ask for the easiest or the lightest, maybe the hands-on things that we can do, it is very simple, but it is so hard when we are in that space to feel we are not kind of like this single individual, just separate from everything, right? So in a way, it is. I couldn't do that when I was feeling this way, but it's still a recommendation I would give to just really perceive ourselves as being connected, and whatever we connect to, maybe it's family, maybe it is God, maybe it is whatever that is giving me the feeling of I am connected, I'm part of this experience, and I'm not alone. I'm not this single individual who is stumbling through life, and there's just no cause for anything. I'm just here and it's random, right? So that to see the connection, and that this experience is something that in a way I'm using that our wounds or the things that we experience, when we're able to walk through it and to heal it, are our greatest strengths, and to say, well, everything is happening for a reason, and I'm here, I'm feeling like this, and to stop fighting it, to just accept this is how I feel. This might stay, but probably because we all have some kind of experience with that, it's probably going to go at some point. So I'll just accept that this is how I feel, and I'm good to myself, to stop that negative, judgmental process where we just beat ourselves up, for not being good enough, for being in this place again, and to just say, stop, I'm just being kind to myself.
Yeah, I think that's, we get conditioned from the time we're born. We get injected with poison. We're given poison in the form of foods, and the water supplies are now low vibration, toxic stews. And so I look at these people, and they are so far away from who they truly are, especially when you're in that state of depression. You don't see yourself. You don't see your magnificence, which you are. You're absolutely, each and every one of us is miraculous. We've been given these bodies that modern medicine will never understand. They don't know how the body works. They don't even know what we're made of. So in that, it's almost like, understand you're conditioned, understand this is programming, understand you've been dealt a set of events that have led you to a false belief about yourself, because I don't believe anyone's natural state is depression. And I think what you said is so true. It's find that thing that lights you up, whether that's reaching out to a family member, whether it's doing breath work, whether it's going outside, just putting your feet in the ocean. Find that place where you can say, what's the kindest thing I can do for myself in this moment? And do that. The easiest, kindest thing you can do for yourself in that moment when you're in that dark place. And I think, reaching out, there's, I think people like you, people like me, I call us pure hearts. I would love to do all of this without having to charge anything, because that it just feels, it's heart work, it's soul work, but yet we're in this, three-dimensional matrix right now. We have to pay for our electricity and water right now, and that type of thing. So reach out to those of us that can connect with you, and to bring you to say, here's my hand, I'm going to reach you out. So is that, you know, when you're working with people, Martin, have you experienced that, you know, somebody in that depressed state without being, I like to kind of quantify it, because
Yeah.
what we're talking about is reaching out for help. You have to, you know, we have to say, well, make sure you're working with a practicing physician, licensed physician as
Yeah.
well. Because it is just as deadly as saying getting a chronic disease state in your body. It's just as potentially fatal. So it's a very serious state to be in. And I really want people to at least just reach out.
Yeah, just doing something, right? So even if it's not the right thing, I think, and there is no right and wrong, but um, if you look at it backwards from where we are now, it's often easier to say, well, this wasn't really getting me right or immediately to where I needed to be or wanted to be, but still. I think that state that we just described and that feeling is oftentimes accompanied by this great overwhelm and fog in a way where we don't know where to go, we don't know what decisions to make, that overwhelm. And so just starting to move in some direction is going to help. And so absolutely, as you mentioned, reaching out, in whatever works, you know, even if it is something that is new, you know, like whatever our intuition. And I think when we go back to my experience, there is this intuition, even though as disconnected as I was from everything that I just mentioned, there were these things that were coming through. And one of these things is the shamanic journeys, and the other was Hawaii, you know, for me. So I was in Hawaii, and even as disconnected as I was, something was giving me a feeling of this is different. Here is something going on. And only 10 years later, I found out that how powerful that energy, for me at least in Hawaii, is, and how much it is of my home, you know. So they're, even as disconnected and blocked as we are, we have that capacity to feel our intuition, to follow our kind of like hunch or whatever that is. So I would just say, follow that intuition, what is calling you, what is helping you, and then do it in a matter, as you said, in which we are kind to ourselves. You know, there's nothing to be there's nothing to be done. We are all like, we have that feeling of progress. Like oftentimes in the spiritual community, there's this almost like a what's it called? It's a casino, also like a mirage. Genau. So it is a mirage of enlightenment that everybody's just like focusing. I need to be enlightened, you know, and I need to reach that goal. But realizing at some point we've always been here, and we'll always run in that hamster wheel or rat race until we realize there's no place we need to be. It's just here right now. I am the beautiful, as you said, magnificent being having this spiritual experience or human experience as a spiritual being, you know. And to just, I know this is really, we're pulling the cart in front of the horse, but to know that in the end, there's nothing we need to be, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's important, you know, especially when you're starting this process, it's the goal. And I'm so appreciative that you said that it's not this state of enlightenment. So you're just love and light, brother, and you're just blissed out all the time. That's not why we're here. That you're searching for a one-sided coin that doesn't exist. So to embrace the full aspect and embrace the depression, love the depression. I think another important thing that I've seen work is change your mantra. You know, listen to that broken record that's going on in your head. Are you constantly putting yourself down? Are you constantly berating yourself for mistakes? If you were your own boss, would you fire? Would you quit? You know, that's I mean, I look at that and my go-to is just to be really hard on myself and really mean to myself. Like that's going to motivate me to success. I just need to be meaner. That was my protocol. But it wasn't until I realized like that's the opposite. That's giving me the opposite of what I want. It's just keeping me down. It's keeping me small. It's keeping me contained. When what we're talking about is releasing those parts of you that are not you, trauma that wasn't you. It isn't a part of, it's a part of you that's has changed, something like a scar, but it isn't who you are in your essence. And so when you start to glimpse at that and and walking in that potential, I feel that then you can experience those elevated states of just being in nature, being in Hawaii and feeling this overwhelming state that just coming from within you.
Yeah, and I think what you just said is so beautiful, and to highlight it from that perspective of where Ram Dass talks about a person who's really depressed, and then he says, "Are you really depressed?" And he says, "Yes, 100% yes." And then, but who is the person who's perceiving that depression, is that part depressed as well? And that often brings people to think, because like we cannot really be 100% depressed, because we're still able to make that judgment, to make that observation. So that part, to really be more observative. And as you said, that the life experience is not about only being high, it is about that dualistic up and down roller coaster ride, where it is about the dance between the two, right? And so I just wanted to really reaffirm that.
That's it. And I like that. It's a dance, but nature gives us the blueprint for this dance. I think nature in harmony is a pendulum. And something's dying, something's being born. That's just the cycles of life. We have to have these seasons. We have to have these moments. And so to embrace it and think, okay, this is just a moment in life. This isn't don't assign meaning to it or pathologize it. It's like, oh no, I'm slipping back into my depression and I knew I could never do this. And boom, now you're back in that container of that you've created, your hell on earth of the depression. So it's more just this fluid motion of seeking more of the richness of the experience. And not, I think we get so caught up in labeling everything. So it's labeling, oh, I've got severe depression. And especially here, 70% of the ads are pharmaceuticals. It's like, take this drug and take that drug. And every study that they've ever come up with, these psychotropics, prescription psychotropic medications do not work. One of the main side effects of most antidepressant drugs is suicidality. So the solution is to, find out where your faulty programming is, almost like in a computer. And I think that's, we can come back full circle now. That's what I think these shamanic journeys are for, to find out, what's this faulty programming that's making me believe these negative things about myself that aren't true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't have anything to say to that.
And so we're kind of running out of time, but I could talk to you all day about this. What are three very simple things somebody could do today to bring in, all of those benefits that we get from facing ourselves in authenticity and releasing some of these trauma, some of these old stories that don't belong to us?
So, I mean, three things we could apply right
Three
now?
things, easy things you could apply. So whether you're sitting there depressed or you're sitting there just wanting to know yourself more deeply.
Yeah. So, and I think we talked about most of them. The first thing is to breathe, you know, and it sounds so easy, but it's like this magic wand or spell, whatever. We can we can breathe and stay with the breath, you know, because emotions, and that is the challenging part of it, is that when we start breathing, that we might start to feel something, right? So that is why we oftentimes breathe so shallowly, because it keeps us from being present in this moment and feeling what we are feeling and how we are feeling. So but breathing is, everybody can do that. Everybody can do that. We have all unlimited amounts of oxygen, as limited as some people might have water supplies, but oxygen we all have
So far.
enough so far. Absolutely. Second thing is to connect with some kind of aspect of nature. If I'm in the middle of, I perceive LA as one of the most metropolitan areas widespread in the US. So even if it's in the middle of LA, concrete jungle, we can have a plant in our house, or we can connect with an animal, with a pet, whatever, it's a bird outside, whatever that is, to just immerse ourselves to the degree that is possible and accessible, not an hour away with the car. That is just a barrier that is probably too big. But if it's something that is accessible right now somewhere around me, to just be with that, you know, to observe it and to just be in that. And you mentioned the ocean. That is just like absolutely the best way. If you have ocean access or water access, a lake, something like that, water is going to be a great source for reconnecting and being, you know. And the third part is listening to inspirational books, podcasts, whatever that is, whatever you have access to. You know, there's like YouTube is probably, there's so much online and free. So we are not talking about I need money, right? If I have some access to a computer or to a library with an internet access, I can just go to YouTube. And maybe, as I mentioned, that's how I did it when I mentioned Ram Dass just a couple of minutes ago. If I would have listened to that when I was not knowing who Ram Dass was, I was just like looking him up and seeing what, and maybe I resonate with some of the things that he says, you know. So just
Yeah.
being somewhere in a context where we feel inspired by someone or something, and to be in that energy field, right? So these would be the three things I would.
I love that. I love the breath work. And I think, you know, the caveat to the breath work is, yes, that the point of it is to release anything that's stored up that doesn't serve your highest potential. And, you know, sometimes you'll cry, sometimes you'll laugh or yawn, but that is the body releasing. So step into that. We've been so programmed to be afraid of our emotions and afraid of just, you know, being weird or whatever. It's just like, do it, you know, in the privacy of your own home, do the breath work, cry, yell, whatever it is that's releasing. And then, yeah, nature is medicine. The ocean, that's where wild animals will go if they are injured. Will go and find a spot near the ocean. They won't eat, they won't drink. They'll just heal the body next to the negative ions of the ocean or waterfalls. Or even if you have, you know, you're going to the beach and it's far away, you can just bring back a few quart jars of ocean water and soak your feet in it every day. Until it gets too funky to, you know, to keep. But those are ways that you can still connect to nature if you're in those concrete jungles. If all you have is a plant, just go and sit next to the plant and create, you know, a infinite loop of energy going from the plant to you, knowing you're giving it wonderful carbon dioxide, it's giving you wonderful oxygen. Thank the plant, you know, do these blessings and go in. I like your third one. I would say when you're listening to inspirational teachers and and those of the spiritual community, go in with a plan. Just don't go on and start scrolling, because then the algorithms have been
Mm-hmm.
just diabolical, I think, very nefarious. So you go on to, go buy a pepper grinder, and then all of a sudden an hour later you're watching cat videos or cat fails. So go in with a plan to say, hey, Ram Dass is a great place to start. And then whatever that sort of feeds off that soul part of you, but just keep going. Find what illuminates your soul. What lights me up will not light Martin up, will not light you up. But that's, why we're these biodynamic beings. It's because we're all different. We all bring these one unique or millions of unique gifts to the table, but we have to get the gunk off in order to see it. So, Martin, where can people find you if they would like to work with you? What is the process for that?
So lighttrails.co is my website, and I am in the process of really creating a wide range of things, products, services. And right now on Thursdays, I have a free webinar, and we're still in the process of finishing the medicine tree journeys, which is 3 more weeks. And then we're starting with the elements. So we'll visit the 4 elements and see and get some guidance and teachings from them. So these free webinars I have, and other than that, just my work that I do as a coach and spiritual teacher, and Light Trails CO is pretty much the go-to place to find any of that.
Okay. Are these webinars live?
They are, yeah.
Oh, and they're free.
Yes.
And what time zone are you in?
I'm in Europe, but the American time zones are 2 p.m. Eastern and
Okay.
11 a.m. Pacific time.
Well, that's easy enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna probably pop in on one of those webinars.
Yeah,
That sounds exciting.
absolutely.
Because, what basically, Martin, I think we just brushed on, the surface level of this, just to say, hey, there is a lot to this. I think you would agree. Like, we could go just on one little sentence and spend hours on it, because it's such a deep, sacred process of healing and changing and transforming what, your belief system. Like, we're just, if you're not consciously aware of that deeper part of yourself, then we're just these facades, meat suits walking around. That we're so much more than that. And I think the point is to get the layers off so that you can start to see yourself, tap into your wisdom, tap into your divine power, so that you can start to feel your intuition, so that intuition then becomes your guide, not necessarily mentors and gurus, which are great to start the process, but ultimately you have the wisdom and the power. So in that, thank you so much for
Thank you.
spending this hour with me, lighting this time up. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. I think that will help a lot of people to know that there's hope. Hey, there's ways out of it. We've both done it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It was beautiful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.